Where time bends and healing flows, we find ourselves in the liminal space between consciousness and dreams, where stories carry medicine for the soul. Tonight, in this sacred threshold between waking and sleeping, a narrative unfolds that holds keys to understanding the intricate patterns of the heart dot in dimensions unseen by ordinary sight. There exists a realm where emotional wounds can be witnessed, understood, and transformed through the gentle alchemy of story. Here, in this quantum field of possibility, transformation becomes not just possible but inevitable, as awareness dawns upon the hidden motivations that guide our choices in love. Through the portal of imagination, we enter a world where a character walks a path that mirrors your own journey of discovery. This being, like you, has found themselves repeatedly drawn to those who remain just beyond reach emotionally, who offer glimpses of connection but withdraw when true intimacy beckons. Beyond the boundaries of linear time, this healing story emerges from the collective unconscious, carrying ancient wisdom about love, attachment, and the unconscious patterns that shape our romantic selections. In this narrative realm, every detail serves the sacred purpose of illumination and healing. The character we are about to meet exists in a space where the laws of ordinary reality bend to serve the deeper truth of psychological healing. Here, external circumstances perfectly mirror internal landscapes, allowing us to witness with clarity the dynamics that usually remain hidden beneath the surface of conscious awareness. In the space between sleeping and waking, stories live that can rewire the neural pathways of attachment, offering new templates for connection that honor both autonomy and intimacy. Tonight's tale carries the frequency of secure attachment, the vibration of healthy love, and the blueprint for relationships that nourish rather than deplete. As your breathing naturally deepens and your body begins its journey toward rest, your unconscious mind opens to receive the wisdom woven throughout this narrative. The characters' discoveries become your discoveries. Their healing becomes your healing. Their transformation becomes a template for your own evolution in love. Through the lens of archetypal story, we can safely explore the tender territories of the heart without triggering defensive mechanisms that might arise from direct confrontation with our patterns. Story creates a sanctuary where truth can be received gently, where insights can bloom naturally, where change can unfold at the perfect pace for integration. In this mystical dimension of narrative healing, we meet a being whose journey illuminates the unconscious magnetism toward emotional unavailability, revealing not only the origins of this pattern, but also the pathway to freedom. Their story becomes a mirror in which you can see your own potential for healthy, secure, deeply satisfying love. The realm we are entering honors the complexity of human attachment, recognizing that our patterns in love are never random but always carry the intelligence of survival, protection, and unconscious loyalty to our earliest experiences of care. This story approaches your heart's patterns with the reverence they deserve, seeing them as adaptations that once served you, even as they may no longer align with your adult desires for connection. Tonight, as this narrative unfolds, your subconscious mind receives permission to examine these patterns without judgment, to understand them with compassion, and to gently release what no longer serves your highest good in love. The character's journey becomes a map for your own transformation, showing you that change is not only possible, but already beginning as you listen to these words. In the sacred space of this story, healing happens not through force or willpower, but through the natural alchemy of awareness meeting compassion. As the character discovers new ways of being in relationship, your own nervous system receives the template for secure attachment, healthy boundaries, and love that nurtures growth rather than triggers old wounds. In a coastal town where morning mist dances between ancient cliffs and rolling waves, lives Elena, a 34-year-old marine botanist whose work studying the resilience of sea plants has earned her recognition in scientific circles. Her cottage sits perched on a bluff overlooking tide pools that mirror the complexity of her inner emotional landscape, beautiful, intricate ecosystems that appear calm on the surface while harboring intense currents beneath. Elena possesses the kind of intelligence that can decode the mysteries of oceanic plant life, but finds herself perpetually puzzled by the patterns of her own heart. She moves through her world with quiet grace, her copper hair catching light like kelp in underwater sunshine, her green eyes holding depths that seem to reflect the very tide pools she studies with such devotion. Those who know Elena describe her as remarkably self-aware, emotionally articulate, and deeply empathetic. She has the gift of making others feel seen and understood, often serving as confidant to friends who seek her wise counsel about their relationships. Yet, when it comes to her own romantic life, Elena finds herself trapped in a recurring pattern that defies her analytical mind and breaks her tender heart with predictable regularity. Over the past 15 years, Elena has found herself consistently drawn to partners who initially sweep her off her feet with intense chemistry and profound conversations, only to gradually reveal their inability to meet her at the level of emotional intimacy her soul craves. There was Marcus, the charismatic photographer who could capture the beauty of landscapes but remained eternally elusive when Elena sought to capture his heart. David, the brilliant musician who composed symphonies that moved audiences to tears, but grew silent whenever Elena's emotions ran deep. Most recently, there was Jonathan, the passionate environmental lawyer who fought fiercely for causes he believed in but retreated behind walls of work and intellectualization whenever their relationship demanded vulnerability. Each relationship follows an eerily similar trajectory: an initial period of intoxication where Elena feels deeply seen and understood, followed by a gradual recognition that while these partners can engage with her mind and share passionate moments, they become uncomfortable or unavailable when she needs emotional support, deeper commitment, or genuine intimacy. They excel at grand gestures, but falter at daily presence. They can discuss philosophy and dreams, but grow distant when conversations turn to feelings and needs. Elena's cottage reflects her divided reality, one part showcasing her professional success with botanical illustrations, scientific awards, and photographs from research expeditions, while another part holds remnants of relationships that began with such promise but dissolved when depth was required. A drawer filled with love letters that speak of future adventures but avoid present commitments. Books on psychology and relationships she studies like specimens, searching for answers to her heart's persistent confusion. Her daily routine involves morning walks along the shore, where she observes how certain plants thrive in harsh conditions. By developing protective mechanisms, thick waxy coatings, deep root systems, minimal leaf surface to reduce vulnerability, she doesn't yet recognize how this mirrors her own adaptation to a world where early emotional needs went unmet, creating an unconscious attraction to partners who replicate familiar patterns of unavailability. Elena's friends wonder why someone so insightful about others remains blind to her own patterns. They've watched her invest enormous energy trying to earn availability from partners who demonstrate through consistent actions their inability to show up fully. They've seen her interpret breadcrumbs of affection as banquets, analyze every interaction for signs of deeper feeling, and extend endless patience to partners who would never offer the same to her. What Elena doesn't consciously understand is that her attraction to emotionally unavailable partners serves an unconscious protective function. Having learned early that love comes with conditions and that emotional needs create burden, she's developed radar for partners who will never ask her to be fully vulnerable, never require the complete emotional presence that terrifies the wounded child within her adult heart. Her professional work with marine plants that survive in challenging environments mirrors her unconscious relationship strategy. She's become expert at thriving in relationships that offer minimal emotional nourishment. mistaking survival for love, endurance for compatibility. She can decode the complex needs of sea organisms, but remains mystified by her own emotional ecosystem's requirements for true flourishing. Elena stands at her kitchen window this particular evening, watching the sun set over waters that shift from gold to purple to deep indigo, unaware that tonight's dreams will carry her into a journey of discovery that will finally illuminate the hidden dynamics governing her heart's choices. Her reflection in the window glass shows a woman of profound depth and beauty, yet her eyes hold the question that has haunted her for years. Why do I keep falling for people who can't truly love me back? The coastal winds carry salt and mystery as Elena prepares for sleep, not knowing that the unconscious wisdom that has guided her professional success in understanding complex ecosystems is about to turn its illuminating power toward the equally complex ecosystem of her romantic attachments. Tonight, the patterns that have mystified her conscious mind will reveal themselves through the symbolic language of dreams and story. The coastal town of Luminous Cove exists in a realm where the boundaries between inner and outer landscapes dissolve, creating a setting where psychological truths manifest as tangible environmental features. Here, the geography itself serves as a mirror for emotional topography, with each natural formation reflecting aspects of Elena's inner world and the universal dynamics of human attachment. The town sits cradled between towering cliffs that represent the protective walls people build around their hearts after early wounds, and vast ocean waters that symbolize the infinite capacity for love that exists beneath surface turbulence. These cliffs, carved by millennia of waves and weather, show both the power of protective barriers and their eventual softening through patient, persistent contact with healing forces. Elena's cottage perches on a unique section of cliff face, where the rock formations create natural windows, openings that frame perfect views of the sea while still providing shelter from storms. This architectural metaphor reflects her psychological position, someone who has learned to maintain visual contact with love's possibilities while remaining safely protected from its full impact. She can observe intimacy from her secured vantage point without risking complete exposure to emotional weather. Below her home, tide pools exist in a state of constant flux, appearing isolated at low tide, but revealing their connection to the greater ocean when waters rise. These pools harbor diverse communities of sea life that have adapted to survive periods of abundance and scarcity, warmth and cold, calm and turbulence. Each organism in these pools demonstrates a different survival strategies, some burrowing deep for protection, others developing hard shells, still others maintaining flexible bodies that bend without breaking. The tide pools serve as Elena's living laboratory, an unconscious mirror, showing her daily examples of adaptation strategies that both preserve life and limit growth. She studies sea anemones that close tightly when touched, protecting their tender interiors but also shutting out potential nourishment. She observes hermit crabs that abandon shells when they outgrow them, demonstrating the courage required to leave familiar protection in order to expand. Throughout Luminous Cove, the plant life tells stories of resilience and adaptation. Salt-tolerant succulents thrive in harsh conditions by storing water internally, never depending on consistent external supply. Cliffside flowers develop deep root systems that anchor them securely, while allowing their blooms to dance freely in ocean breezes. Kelp forests sway gracefully with underwater currents rather than rigidly resisting flow, demonstrating flexibility as a survival strategy. The town's human inhabitants unconsciously mirror Elena's attachment patterns, creating a community where emotional unavailability masquerades as independence, where fear of vulnerability presents as strength, where the ability to survive with minimal emotional nourishment gets praised as resilience. The local coffee shop owner maintains friendly distance with customers, never revealing personal details despite years of daily interaction. The bookstore curator creates deep connections with literary characters while keeping human relationships safely superficial. Yet within this landscape of protective adaptations, signs of healing and authentic connection also emerge. An elderly gardener tends a community greenhouse where plants from different climates learn to thrive together, demonstrating that security allows for diversity and growth. A lighthouse keeper maintains steady presence regardless of weather conditions, embodying the reliable availability that wounded hearts secretly long for. Children play on the beach with unguarded joy, their natural capacity for connection not yet armored by protective strategies. The weather patterns in Luminous Cove reflect emotional atmospheres, with morning mists representing the confusion that clouds clear seeing of relationship dynamics. Afternoon sunlight creates moments of clarity where patterns become visible, while evening storms mirror the turbulence that arises when old protective systems are challenged by growth opportunities. Each season brings its own emotional climate: winters introspection, spring's tentative opening, summer's full blossoming, autumn's release and preparation for renewal. The town's architecture tells the story of human attempts to balance safety with connection. Homes feature large windows that invite light while maintaining sturdy walls, porches that extend welcome while preserving private interior spaces, gardens that beautify the community while remaining clearly bounded. Every structure demonstrates humanity's universal challenge: how to remain open to love while protecting against harm. Local legends speak of the luminous cove phenomenon certain nights when the water glows with bioluminescent organisms that become visible only in darkness, creating beauty from unseen life forces. These mystical evenings represent moments when hidden emotional truths become illuminated, when the unconscious patterns governing our choices in love reveal themselves with startling clarity. Ancient caves carved into the cliffsides hold crystalline formations that grew over centuries in darkness, demonstrating how beauty and strength can develop even in hidden places. How what appears empty or barren may harbor incredible potential for emergence. These caves serve as natural meditation spaces where sound amplifies and echoes, creating acoustic environments where inner voices become impossible to ignore. The local marine sanctuary protects vulnerable species during critical growth periods, providing safe spaces where development can occur without threat. This sanctuary represents the therapeutic container necessary for healing attachment wounds. A kindness sanctuary represents the therapeutic container necessary for healing attachment wounds. A protected environment where old patterns can be examined without judgment and new capacities can develop without premature exposure to stress. Throughout Luminous Cove, bridges span various waterways, each designed differently to accommodate specific crossing needs. Some bridges are sturdy and permanent, others flexible and responsive to changing conditions, still others temporary and meant only for specific seasons. These bridges symbolize different approaches to connection. The infrastructure required to safely traverse the spaces between self and other, independence and intimacy, protection and vulnerability. As night settles over this mystical landscape, stars reflect in the calm waters between tide pools, creating a scene where earth and sky, individual and cosmic, finite and infinite, merge in luminous unity. This is the setting where Elena's journey of discovery will unfold, a place where external environment mirrors internal process, where healing happens through natural metaphor, where transformation occurs as naturally as tides changing with moon phases. Elena's morning ritual reveals the intricate choreography of her unconscious relationship patterns. She rises before dawn, moving through her cottage with practiced quiet, careful not to disturb the silence that serves as her protective cocoon. Her first instinct is to check her phone, not for work communications or weather updates, but for any messages from current or former partners. Those emotional, unavailable figures who exist at the periphery of her awareness like distant lighthouses, sending intermittent signals. When no messages await, Elena experiences a familiar cocktail of relief and disappointment. Relief because she's not required to decode ambiguous communications or analyze the subtext of minimal words. Disappointment because the silence confirms what her heart fears, that she exists in others' lives as an optional presence rather than essential connection. This daily morning ritual demonstrates how she's learned to survive on emotional scraps while maintaining the fiction that she's chosen. Independence. Her breakfast routine further illuminates these patterns. Elena prepares elaborate meals for herself: fresh fruit arranged artfully, herbs from her garden, attention to nutrition and presentation, yet eats standing at the counter while checking emails or reviewing research notes. She cannot simply sit with herself in nourishing presence, cannot allow the vulnerability of quiet enjoyment. Even self-care becomes productivity. Even solitude becomes preparation for external engagement. At the marine laboratory, Elena's colleagues witness her expertise in creating optimal conditions for plant specimens that require specific environmental parameters to thrive. She adjusts salinity levels, monitors temperature fluctuations, provides precisely calibrated lighting and nutrients. Her plants flourish under this attentive care. Yet Elena cannot recognize that she provides for sea organisms what she's never learned to expect for herself. In relationships, consistent availability, attuned responsiveness, reliable presence. During lunch breaks, Elena gravitates toward conversations with colleagues who share intellectual passions but avoid personal disclosure. She can discuss marine ecosystems for hours while revealing nothing about her inner emotional landscape. This pattern serves dual purposes. It allows her to connect through her strength, her brilliant mind, while protecting her perceived weakness, her tender heart that longs for deep emotional intimacy. Elena's after-work activities reveal another layer of her unconscious attachment strategy. She frequents art galleries, lecture series, and cultural events where she can observe others experiencing deep emotion without becoming vulnerable herself. She's drawn to tragic love stories in literature and film, weeping at fictional heartbreak while maintaining emotional distance from her own pain. These vicarious emotional experiences provide a safe outlet for feelings she cannot risk expressing directly in her relationships. Her home environment tells the story of someone who has mastered the art of appearing unavailable while secretly longing for connection. Beautiful furnishings arranged with museum-like perfection create an atmosphere that welcomes visitors while discouraging them from getting too comfortable. Her bedroom, the most private space, contains the only evidence of her deeper longing journals, filled with relationship analysis, self-help books marked with extensive notes, photographs from happier moments with partners who eventually withdrew. Elena's approach to conflict reveals perhaps the most telling aspect of her pattern. When partners become emotionally distant or unavailable, rather than addressing the behavior directly, she increases her own availability, working harder to create the intimacy she craves. She plans thoughtful gestures, initiates deeper conversations, suggests couples activities, essentially doing the emotional labor for both people in the relationship. This pattern ensures she never has to risk the vulnerability of stating her needs clearly, never has to face potential rejection of her authentic emotional requirements. Her social interactions demonstrate how she's become expert at being supportive to others while deflecting support offered to her. Friends seek Elena's advice because she listens without judgment and offers insightful perspectives. Yet when they attempt to reciprocate care, she skillfully redirects conversations back to their concerns. This dynamic allows her to feel valuable and needed while maintaining the familiar position of emotional giver rather than receiver. Elena's weekend routines reveal the depth of her adaptation to relational unavailability. She fills solitary time with projects, exercise, cultural activities, staying busy to avoid confronting the loneliness that accompanies her pattern of choosing partners who cannot show up fully. She's learned to find satisfaction in accomplishment, beauty, intellectual stimulation, and service to others because romantic relationships consistently fail to provide the emotional nourishment her heart requires. Her dating behaviors follow predictable patterns that ensure she attracts emotionally unavailable partners. She presents herself as low-maintenance, independent, intellectually stimulating, but not emotionally demanding. She's learned to be fascinating without being needy, attractive without being vulnerable, caring without being requiring. This presentation appeals to partners who want connection without responsibility, intimacy without commitment, love without the messy reality of another person's emotional needs. Elena's internal dialogue during relationship transitions reveals her unconscious loyalty to familiar patterns. When partners begin withdrawing, her inner voice becomes a detective, analyzing every interaction for clues about how to regain their attention. She rarely questions whether she wants to be with someone who requires such vigilant monitoring. Instead, she assumes the problem lies in her inability to crack the code of their availability. Her response to relationship endings follows a consistent pattern: initial devastation followed by intellectual analysis, where she dissects every moment for lessons learned, promising herself she'll recognize red flags earlier next time. Yet this analytical approach bypasses the emotional processing necessary for true healing, ensuring she enters new relationships with the same unconscious patterns intact. The most revealing aspect of Elena's behavioral patterns is how she experiences anxiety, not when partners are unavailable, but when they offer genuine availability. The few times partners have shown up with consistent presence, authentic emotion, and reliable commitment, Elena has found reasons to create distance suddenly. Noticing incompatibilities, feeling claustrophobic, or losing romantic interest. This response reveals that her attraction to unavailability serves an unconscious protective function, keeping her safe from the vulnerability that true intimacy requires. In the archaeological layers of Elena's early attachment experiences lies the foundation of her adult romantic patterns, buried beneath decades of adaptive strategies, yet still actively influencing her choices in love. Her origin story unfolds not as simple cause and effect, but as a complex weaving of protection, survival, and unconscious loyalty to her first experiences of care. Elena's childhood home was a place of profound contradictions, beautiful on the surface yet unstable beneath. Her father, Robert, was a respected marine biologist whose groundbreaking research took him around the world for months at a time. When present, he was captivating, filling the house with stories of underwater discoveries, bringing exotic shells and specimens, creating magical moments of connection that left Elena feeling special and seen. Yet his departures were sudden and absolute, leaving no consistent schedule for communication, no reliable return date, no acknowledgement of the impact his absence created. During these extended separations, Elena learned to hold her love for her father in suspension, maintaining connection through idealization while protecting herself from the pain of missing him. She developed the capacity to find excitement in uncertainty, to maintain emotional attachment across vast distances, to interpret minimal contact as profound connection. These early adaptations to paternal unavailability became the template for her adult romantic attractions. Her mother, Catherine, responded to her husband's absences by becoming hypervigilant about Elena's emotional needs, alternating between overprotective hovering and resentful withdrawal. Catherine's anxiety about Robert's infidelities and his emotional distance translated into complicated messages for Elena about love and loyalty. During her father's absences, Catherine would pull Elena into adult conversations about relationship, disappointments, seeking emotional support from her young daughter. When Robert returned, Catherine would become unavailable to Elena, focusing all attention on trying to secure her husband's commitment. This dynamic taught Elena that emotional availability was conditional and temporary, that she could be essential to someone during crisis, but abandoned when that person's primary attachment returned. She learned to be hyper-attuned to others' emotional states, to provide support without expecting reciprocity, to find her value in being helpful rather than simply loved for existing. The most formative incident occurred when Elena was 8 years old. Her father had returned from a 6-month expedition, bringing gifts and attention that made Elena feel like the most important person in his world. For 3 weeks, he was fully present, helping with homework, planning adventures, listening to her stories with complete attention. Elena allowed herself to believe he had finally chosen to be a consistently available father. Then, without warning or explanation, Robert announced another expedition departing the following day. Elena's heart broke not just from his leaving, but from her own naivety in believing this time was different. That night, she made an unconscious vow that would shape decades of relationship choices. She would never again allow herself to be surprised by unavailability. Better to expect distance than to be devastated by unexpected departure. Elena's adolescent relationships reflected this protective adaptation. She found herself drawn to boys who were popular but emotionally distant, who offered moments of intense connection followed by periods of indifference. She learned to interpret this pattern as exciting rather than painful, developing a high tolerance for emotional inconsistency that she mistook for maturity and independence. Her first serious relationship in college with Michael perfectly replicated her parental dynamics. Michael was brilliant, charismatic, and completely absorbed in his academic pursuits. He could engage in profound conversations about philosophy and literature, creating moments of intellectual intimacy that felt transcendent. Yet when Elena needed emotional support during her grandmother's death, Michael became uncomfortable and distant, suggesting she seek counseling rather than offering his own presence and comfort. Elena's response to Michael's emotional unavailability reveals how deeply her protective patterns had become embedded. Rather than recognizing his limitation as incompatibility, she interpreted his withdrawal as evidence of her own excessive neediness. She began editing herself, presenting only her strong intellectual side while hiding her emotional needs. This internal split, where she experienced emotions fully but expressed them minimally, became her standard operating procedure in relationships. The origin of Elena's pattern also connects to her identification with her father's career passion. By choosing marine biology, she unconsciously aligned herself with the parent who left, perhaps hoping to understand his priorities or earn his attention through shared interests. Her professional success in studying organisms that survive in harsh conditions mirrors her emotional adaptation to surviving in relationships with minimal nourishment. Elena's family mythology reinforced these patterns through stories that glorified independence and emotional resilience. Her parents praised her as easygoing and self-sufficient, never recognizing that these qualities developed as survival adaptations rather than natural temperament. She learned that being low maintenance earned approval, while expressing needs created burden. The protective wisdom of Elena's childhood patterns becomes clear when viewed through the lens of survival. In a family where emotional availability was unreliable and conditional, developing tolerance for distance and skill and emotional self-sufficiency served essential functions. These adaptations allowed her to maintain connection with beloved but inconsistently available parents while protecting her heart from constant re-injury. Her unconscious loyalty to these early patterns serves multiple protective functions in adulthood. By choosing emotionally unavailable partners, Elena ensures she never has to risk the complete vulnerability that secure attachment requires. she can maintain the familiar position of emotional giver, avoiding the terror of being seen in her full need and potentially rejected. Her attraction to unavailable partners also prevents her from outgrowing her family's emotional limitations, maintaining unconscious loyalty to parents who did their best within their own attachment wounds. Understanding Elena's origin story reveals that her relationship patterns, while painful in their current expression, emerged from intelligent adaptations to early circumstances. Her heart learned to survive in conditions of inconsistent emotional availability by developing exceptional resilience, independence, and tolerance for uncertainty. These qualities served her well in childhood and continue to serve her professionally, even as they limit her capacity for the secure, available love her adult heart craves. Standing in her laboratory on a rain-soaked Tuesday afternoon, Elena experiences a moment of crystalline clarity that shatters the protective narratives she's maintained about her relationship patterns. She's observing a sea anemone that has remained closed for 3 days, protecting itself from a perceived threat that no longer exists. As she notes this behavior in her research journal, the parallel to her own romantic life strikes her with undeniable force. The anemone's protective response, once adaptive to actual danger, has become maladaptive in the current safe environment. Elena realizes she's been doing the same thing, maintaining defensive strategies learned in childhood that no longer serve her adult reality. The recognition arrives not as gentle insight, but as urgent awakening, impossible to ignore or intellectualize away. This moment of collision between her professional observations and personal patterns triggers a cascade of uncomfortable awareness. Elena begins recognizing how she's been unconsciously selecting partners who confirm her early beliefs about love, that it comes with conditions, arrives unpredictably, and requires her to minimize her own needs. She sees how her attraction to emotionally unavailable partners has been less about their appeal and more about their familiarity. The laboratory around her suddenly feels like a metaphor for her emotional life, controlled, predictable, safe, yet limited in its capacity for spontaneous growth and authentic relationship. She provides optimal conditions for specimens to thrive while accepting suboptimal conditions in her romantic connections. The contrast becomes painfully obvious as she realizes she's been treating sea plants with more consistent care and attention than she expects from romantic partners. Elena's body responds to this recognition with physical sensations. She spent years avoiding tightness in her chest, trembling in her hands, a deep ache in her throat that signals suppressed grief. These somatic responses carry information her mind has been deflecting, the accumulated pain of years spent accepting emotional crumbs while pretending they constituted a feast. As rain patters against the laboratory windows, Elena confronts the cost of her protective patterns. She inventories the relationships she's abandoned, not because partners were wrong for her, but because they offered the availability that terrified her unconscious system. She remembers David from graduate school, who consistently showed up with emotional presence and genuine interest in her inner world, yet whom she found boring compared to the drama of pursuing unavailable partners. The collision extends to her current situation with Jonathan, the environmental lawyer who's been sending mixed signals for months. Elena realizes she's been interpreting his inconsistency as intrigue, rather than recognizing it as evidence of his inability to show up reliably. She sees how she's been doing emotional labor for both of them, creating the intimacy she craves, while protecting him from having to reciprocate at the same level. Elena's nervous system, calibrated to hypervigilance around others' emotional availability, begins sending different signals as awareness dawns. Instead of the familiar anxiety that drives her to pursue withdrawn partners, she experiences a new kind of nervousness, the fear that comes from recognizing she has choices she hasn't been making consciously. This fear carries both terror and excitement, like standing at the edge of a cliff that offers both danger and magnificent views. The present moment collision reveals not just the limitations of her current patterns, but also glimpses of possibility that exist beyond them. Elena begins imagining what it might feel like to be with someone who doesn't require her to monitor their emotional availability, who shows up consistently rather than sporadically, who can meet her depth rather than retreating from it. These imaginings feel both deeply appealing and profoundly threatening to systems organized around emotional self-sufficiency. Elena recognizes how her professional success has served as compensation for romantic disappointment, providing the consistent achievement and recognition her relationships failed to deliver. She sees how she's unconsciously chosen a career studying resilience in harsh conditions, because it mirrors her emotional reality, becoming expert at surviving in challenging environments rather than seeking conditions that allow for flourishing. The awareness extends to her current social dynamics, where she realizes she surrounded herself with people who admire her independence, while no one truly knows her vulnerabilities. She's created a life structure that supports her protective patterns, while limiting opportunities for the authentic connection her heart secretly craves. Even her friends unconsciously collude with her emotional unavailability by accepting her deflection of care and support. As laboratory equipment hums around her, Elena confronts the loneliness that her patterns have been designed to manage. She acknowledges that while her adaptations have protected her from the acute pain of rejection and abandonment, they've also shielded her from the joy of being truly known and consistently loved. The cost-benefit analysis of her protective strategies begins shifting as she recognizes their diminishing returns. Elena's body carries the cellular memory of early attachment disruptions. Yet in this moment of recognition, she also senses her nervous system's capacity for new learning. She feels the difference between the hyperarousal that accompanies pursuing unavailable partners and the calm alertness that comes from imagining secure connection. Her system recognizes safety in a way it hasn't experienced since early childhood. The collision culminates in Elena's recognition that her pattern of choosing emotionally unavailable partners has been an unconscious attempt to heal her original wound by repeatedly recreating it, hoping for a different outcome. She sees how she's been trying to earn from romantic partners the consistent availability her father never provided, not recognizing that she's been choosing people specifically because they cannot give what she seeks. Standing in her laboratory, as afternoon light filters through rain-streaked windows, Elena experiences the profound discomfort and excitement that accompanies awakening. She cannot return to unconscious participation in patterns that no longer serve her, yet she hasn't yet developed new patterns to replace them. This liminal space between old and new, familiar and unknown, safe and growth-promoting, becomes the fertile ground where transformation begins. On a storm-swept evening when the lighthouse beacon cuts through sheets of rain and ocean spray, creates luminous patterns against Elena's cottage windows, an unexpected visitor arrives who will serve as catalyst for her transformation. Dr. Miriam Chun, a renowned attachment researcher whose work Elena has admired from afar, appears at her door, seeking shelter from the tempest that has grounded her coastal flight to a nearby conference. Dr. Chun carries herself with the quiet authority of someone who has spent decades studying the intricate dance of human connection. Yet her presence radiates warmth rather than clinical detachment. Her silver hair moves like water in the wind, and her dark eyes hold depths that suggest she's witnessed countless stories of heartbreak and healing. Elena invites her in, not knowing this encounter will illuminate the hidden architecture of her romantic patterns. As they sit before Elena's fireplace, cups of tea warming their hands while storm winds howl outside, Dr. Chun's trained eye quickly recognizes the sophisticated defense systems Elena has constructed. The perfectly arranged living space that welcomes yet maintains distance. The way Elena offers gracious hospitality while revealing nothing personal. The subtle tension in her body that suggests constant vigilance. All these details tell Dr. Chun a familiar story of brilliant people who have learned to survive on emotional scraps. You study marine plants, Dr. Chun observes, noticing Elena's botanical illustrations adorning the walls. I imagine you understand adaptation strategies, how organisms develop specific traits to survive in particular environments. Her voice carries gentle curiosity rather than diagnostic assessment, creating space for discovery rather than defensiveness. Elena finds herself drawn into conversation about her research, describing how certain sea plants develop thick protective coatings in harsh saltwater conditions, how they learn to thrive with minimal nutrients, how they adapt their root systems to anchor securely while remaining flexible enough to bend with underwater currents. As she speaks, Dr. Chun listens with the quality of attention. Elena realizes she's been craving present, engaged, responsive, yet not invasive. Fascinating, Dr. Chen muses. And I wonder, do these adaptations that ensure survival in harsh conditions sometimes limit the plant's ability to thrive when conditions improve? Can protective strategies that once served life actually inhibit growth when the environment becomes more nurturing? The question lands in Elena's awareness like a depth charge, sending ripples through her carefully constructed understanding of her own emotional adaptations. She experiences the familiar sensation of being seen at levels deeper than she typically allows. Yet instead of triggering her usual withdrawal, Dr. Chen's presence feels safe enough to explore these uncomfortable territories. As thunder rolls across the ocean and rain creates percussion against windows, Dr. Chen begins sharing insights from her decades of research into adult attachment patterns. She speaks not as expert delivering diagnoses, but as fellow human being who has witnessed the beautiful, heartbreaking ways people learn to protect themselves from relational wounds, while unconsciously perpetuating the very conditions they hope to escape. In my work, I've observed that people who experienced inconsistent availability in their earliest relationships often develop exquisitely sensitive radar for emotionally unavailable partners, Dr. Chen explains. Not because they enjoy the pain, but because unavailability feels familiar, predictable, manageable. There's strange comfort in knowing what to expect, even when what we expect causes suffering. Elena feels recognition dawning like sunrise, gradual yet inevitable. Dr. Chun continues weaving theoretical frameworks with profound compassion, explaining how children who learn to love across distances often become adults who mistake longing for love, who confuse the activation of pursuit systems with genuine attraction, who develop high tolerance for emotional inconsistency because consistency was never their baseline experience. The tragedy, Dr. Chen observes, is that these adaptations represent such intelligence, such creativity in the face of impossible circumstances. Children who learn to love unavailable parents are demonstrating remarkable resilience. The problem comes when these survival strategies persist into adult relationships where different possibilities exist. The storm outside mirrors the internal weather Elena experiences as these insights penetrate her protective barriers. She realizes she's been unconsciously loyal to her childhood adaptation strategies, maintaining them even in adult contexts where secure attachment might be possible. The recognition carries both grief for what she's been missing and excitement for what might become available. Dr. Chun introduces the concept of security, the possibility that adults can develop secure attachment patterns regardless of their early experiences through relationships that provide consistent availability, attuned responsiveness, and safe emotional regulation. Your nervous system learned to survive in conditions of inconsistent love, she explains gently, but it can also learn to thrive in conditions of reliable presence. As the storm begins subsiding and moonlight starts filtering through breaking clouds, Dr. Chun offers Elena a different lens through which to understand her romantic history. What if your attraction to unavailable partners isn't a character flaw or poor judgment, but evidence of your system's attempt to master an early wound? What if you've been unconsciously seeking partners who replicate your father's pattern, because some part of you believes that if you can finally earn consistent love from an unavailable person, you'll heal the original injury? This reframe shifts Elena's entire relationship with her romantic patterns. Instead of seeing herself as repeatedly making poor choices, she begins recognizing the unconscious wisdom in her selections, how her system has been attempting to resolve unfinished, emotional, business through romantic relationships. The shame that has accompanied her pattern recognition begins, transforming into compassion for the wounded child within her, who's been trying so hard to fix what was never her responsibility to repair. Dr. Chun introduces Elena to the concept of corrective emotional experiences, relationships that provide what was missing in early attachment bonds, allowing the nervous system to update its expectations about love and availability. Healing happens not through understanding alone, she explains, but through embodied experiences of secure connection that gradually teach your system new possibilities. As candlelight flickers in the growing calm, Elena finds herself sharing vulnerabilities she's kept hidden for years. She describes the loneliness of loving people who can't match her emotional depth, the exhaustion of trying to earn availability from partners who demonstrate through consistent actions their inability to show up fully. Dr. Chun receives these revelations with the steady presence Elena has been seeking her entire adult life. Your capacity for deep feeling isn't a liability, Dr. Chun affirms. It's a gift that deserves to be met by someone equally capable of emotional presence. The problem isn't your depth, it's your tolerance for shallowness in others. This statement lands like a key turning in a lock Elena didn't know existed, opening doorways to self-acceptance she's never allowed herself to explore. Dr. Chun guides Elena through a gentle exploration of what secure attachment might actually feel like: the nervous system calm that comes from predictable availability, the ease of expressing needs without fear of withdrawal, the joy of being loved for authenticity rather than performance. Elena realizes she's been so focused on what she could give in relationships that she's never clearly identified what she needs to receive. As the storm fully passes and stars emerge in the clearing sky, Dr. Chun prepares to continue her journey. Yet her presence has already catalyzed profound shifts in Elena's understanding. Before leaving, she offers Elena one final gift of perspective. Your pattern of choosing unavailable partners has served important functions. It's kept you safe from the vulnerability that true intimacy requires while maintaining your unconscious loyalty to early attachment figures. Honoring these protective functions allows you to release them when you're ready for something different. Elena watches Dr. Chun's car disappear into the night. Yet the transformation she initiated continues reverberating through Elena's awareness. For the first time, Elena can imagine romantic relationships that don't require her to monitor another person's emotional availability, partnerships where her depth is met rather than feared, connections that nourish rather than deplete her nervous system. The possibility feels both thrilling and terrifying, like standing at the threshold of a new world. In the weeks following Dr. Chen's visit, Elena begins conducting what she privately calls attachment experiments, small conscious modifications, to her relational patterns designed to test new possibilities for connection. Like the careful hypothesis testing that guides her marine research, she approaches this emotional exploration with scientific curiosity, tempered by recognition that her heart, unlike her botanical specimens, cannot be safely contained and controlled. Laboratory conditions. Her first experiment involves conscious awareness during her interactions with Jonathan, the environmental lawyer whose mixed signals have kept her in familiar patterns of pursuit and withdrawal. instead of automatically interpreting his delayed responses to texts as interesting mystique. Elena practices recognizing them as evidence of his actual availability level. When he cancels their dinner plans with 30 minutes notice, citing an urgent work deadline, Elena notices her habitual impulse to accommodate while simultaneously observing the anxiety this inconsistency creates in her nervous system. Rather than immediately offering alternative plans or expressing understanding for his schedule conflicts, her typical pattern of emotional labor, Elena simply acknowledges his cancellation and waits to see if he takes initiative to reschedule. This small shift in behavior feels revolutionary to her system, which has been trained to work harder when partners become less available. The discomfort of not actively managing the relationship dynamic triggers intense anxiety. Yet Elena recognizes this activation as her system's response to unfamiliar territory rather than evidence of danger. Elena's second experiment involves practicing direct communication about her emotional needs. When her friend Sarah asks about her recent dating experiences, instead of deflecting with humor or intellectual analysis, Elena ventures authentic disclosure. I'm realizing I've been accepting breadcrumbs of emotional availability while pretending they're full meals. It's lonely, and I'm not sure how to change the pattern. Sarah's immediate, empathetic response surprises Elena instead of judgment or advice. She receives understanding and validation. This positive reception of vulnerability encourages Elena to continue experimenting with emotional authenticity. At work, Elena begins observing her colleague Marcus, whose secure relationship with his partner provides a living example of consistent availability. She notices how Marcus speaks about his partner with pride rather than frustration, how he integrates his personal and professional lives without drama, how he navigates conflicts through direct communication rather than withdrawal or pursuit. Dynamics. These observations offer Elena a template for healthy relationship functioning that contrasts sharply with her normalized patterns of emotional inconsistency. Elena's most challenging experiment involves sitting with the discomfort that arises when she imagines relationships characterized by reliable presence rather than intermittent availability. She practices envisioning romantic partnerships where she doesn't need to decode mixed signals, where emotional needs are met with responsiveness rather than resistance, where vulnerability is welcomed rather than creating distance. These visualizations trigger unexpected anxiety, revealing how deeply her system associates available love with danger and unknown territory. The experimental phase reveals the sophisticated ways Elena's nervous system maintains familiar patterns even when her conscious mind desires change. When an acquaintance from her graduate program, someone who had consistently shown interest and emotional availability contacts her about meeting for coffee during his visit to town, Elena's initial response is enthusiastic. Yet as the meeting approaches, she finds herself manufacturing reasons why he might not be suitable. Too eager, probably boring, likely lacking the complexity she finds attractive. She recognizes these judgments as her system's attempt to maintain familiar patterns of pursuing unavailable partners. Elena decides to meet David anyway, treating their encounter as research into her own resistance to availability. During their conversation, she notices how his consistent eye contact initially feels overwhelming to her system, which is calibrated for the intermittent attention of emotionally unavailable partners. His genuine interest in her thoughts and feelings creates unexpected vulnerability, as she realizes how unaccustomed she is to being seen without having to perform or earn attention. Most surprisingly, Elena discovers that David's emotional availability doesn't trigger her usual romantic attraction. Instead, she feels calm, seen, valued sensations her system doesn't associate with romantic love, because love has always carried anxiety, uncertainty, and activation of pursuit behaviors. This recognition forces Elena to confront how her romantic attractions have been organized around familiar stress responses rather than genuine compatibility or emotional nourishment. Elena's experiments extend to her relationship with herself, practicing the kind of consistent emotional availability she's been seeking from others. Instead of automatically scheduling every free moment with activities that distract from emotional processing, she creates spaces for internal attunement. She practices sitting with difficult feelings without immediately analyzing or solving them, learning to provide herself the steady presence she's been trying to earn from romantic partners. These self-attunement practices reveal the depth of Elena's disconnection from her own emotional landscape. She discovers that beneath her intellectual understanding of her feelings lies a rich world of sensations, needs, desires, and longings that she's been systematically suppressing to maintain her appealing facade of low-maintenance independence. Reconnecting with these internal signals feels both exciting and overwhelming, like rediscovering parts of herself that have been in exile. Elena begins experimenting with expressing preferences and boundaries in low-stakes situations. When colleagues suggest restaurants for team lunches, instead of automatically deferring to others' choices, she practices stating her own preferences. When friends invite her to social events that don't appeal to her, she experiments with declining, gracefully rather than automatically accommodating. These small acts of self-advocacy help her nervous system practice honoring her authentic desires rather than constantly prioritizing others' comfort. The most transformative experiment involves Elena's response to Jonathan's eventual attempt to reconnect after several weeks of minimal contact. Instead of immediately welcoming his renewed attention with gratitude and availability, her historical pattern, Elena notices her genuine feelings about his inconsistent presence. She recognizes irritation, disappointment, and a growing awareness that his pattern of withdrawal and return creates stress rather than excitement in her system. When Jonathan suggests meeting for dinner with the casual assumption that she accommodate his last-minute availability, Elena practices a response that honors her own needs. I appreciate you reaching out. I need more consistency and advanced planning in my relationships than we've had. If you're interested in exploring something different, I'm open to discussing what that might look like. His immediate defensiveness and suggestion that she's being high maintenance provides perfect data about his capacity for the kind of partnership she's beginning to recognize she deserves. Elena's experimental phase culminates in a profound recognition. Her nervous system can learn new patterns of connection, but the process requires tolerating significant discomfort as familiar strategies are released and unfamiliar possibilities are explored. She realizes that her attraction to unavailable partners has been partly maintained by the dopamine hit of intermittent reinforcement, the biochemical reward system that keeps her pursuing inconsistent availability like a gambler chasing occasional wins. Understanding this neurochemical component of her pattern helps Elena approach her transformation with greater compassion and patience. She recognizes that changing deep attachment patterns requires retraining her nervous system's reward circuits, learning to find satisfaction in steady presence rather than dramatic uncertainty. This reframing transforms her healing journey from a character improvement project into a gentle process of nervous system re-education. 3 months after Dr. Chun's catalytic visit, Elena experiences her breakthrough moment not through dramatic revelation, but through an accumulation of small awarenesses that suddenly crystallize into undeniable truth. The moment arrives on an ordinary Tuesday morning as she walks along the tide pools, observing the intricate ecosystem she's studied for years. When the parallel between her professional insights and personal patterns becomes impossible to ignore, she kneels beside a particular tide pool she's monitored for 2 years, watching a sea anemone that has remained perpetually closed despite the absence of any threats in its environment. This anemone continues displaying protective behaviors learned during a period when the pool experienced harsh conditions. Yet it's now in a thriving ecosystem with optimal temperature, salinity, and nutrition. Elena realizes she's been witnessing a perfect metaphor for her own emotional life, maintaining protective patterns from childhood, long after her environment has changed to offer possibilities for security and growth. The breakthrough deepens as Elena recognizes that her attraction to emotionally unavailable partners has never been about the partners themselves, but about maintaining an internal sense of safety through familiar patterns of distance and pursuit. Unavailable partners allow her to experience the biochemical intensity of romantic attraction without risking the profound vulnerability that secure attachment requires. She's been unconsciously choosing partners who confirm her early beliefs about love while protecting her from discovering whether different kinds of love might be possible. As morning sunlight creates prismatic patterns through tide pool water, Elena experiences a fundamental shift in her nervous system, a dropping away of the hypervigilance that has characterized her romantic life. For the first time, she can imagine being with someone without needing to monitor their emotional availability, without strategizing how to earn their attention, without constantly calibrating her own behavior to maintain their interest. This imagined ease feels both deeply appealing and profoundly foreign to her system. Elena's breakthrough includes recognizing that her pattern of choosing unavailable partners has been unconscious loyalty to her father, an attempt to prove that she could be lovable enough to earn consistent presence from someone who demonstrated repeatedly their inability to show up fully. By repeatedly selecting similar partners, she's been trying to resolve her original wound while ensuring she never has to risk discovering whether she deserves better treatment. The realization strikes her that she's been approaching romantic relationships like scientific research problems, believing that if she could just understand her partners deeply enough, analyze their patterns accurately enough, provide the right conditions consistently enough, she could create the intimacy she craved. This approach has kept her focused on others' availability while avoiding examination of her own capacity for receiving love when it's offered freely. Elena's breakthrough moment includes a profound shift in her relationship with her own emotional needs. She recognizes that the needs she's been trying to minimize or hide for consistent presence, emotional attunement, reliable communication, authentic intimacy are not excessive demands, but basic requirements for healthy adult relationships. The shame she's carried about having these needs begins dissolving as she understands them as evidence of her capacity for deep connection, rather than signs of neediness standing among the tide pools, where her professional and personal insights converge. Elena experiences what Dr. Chun had described as a corrective emotional experience, a moment when her nervous system updates its fundamental beliefs about love and relationships. She feels the possibility of being loved not for her independence or low-maintenance presentation, but for her authentic self, including her needs, vulnerabilities, and desires for emotional connection. The breakthrough extends to Elena's understanding of her own worthiness. She realizes she's been unconsciously proving through her tolerance of emotional unavailability that she doesn't deserve better treatment. By accepting breadcrumbs of attention and affection, she's been confirming childhood messages about her value rather than challenging them. This recognition feels like stepping out of a prison cell she didn't know she'd been inhabiting. Elena's nervous system begins reorganizing around new possibilities as she imagines relationships where her emotional depth is welcomed rather than feared, where her needs are met with responsiveness rather than resistance, where her authenticity is appreciated rather than requiring management. These possibilities feel simultaneously thrilling and terrifying, like discovering she can fly when she spent her entire life believing she must stay grounded. The breakthrough includes recognition that her professional success has served as both compensation for romantic disappointment and evidence of her capacity for creating optimal conditions for growth and thriving. If she can provide consistently attuned care for marine specimens, supporting their development through careful attention to their needs, she deserves romantic partners who can offer similar consistency and attunement in response to her emotional requirements. Elena realizes that her fear of being too much has caused her to make herself too little in relationships, minimizing her vibrancy, intelligence, emotional range, and authentic desires to avoid overwhelming partners who lack capacity for depth. She sees how this self-diminishment has attracted partners who prefer surface-level connection, creating a self-perpetuating cycle where her authentic self remains hidden and unrecognized. As tide pools reflect morning sky, Elena experiences the emergence of what feels like her true self, not the carefully modulated version she's presented in relationships, but her full emotional range, intellectual brilliance, and capacity for profound love. This emergence feels like remembering who she was before she learned to edit herself for others' comfort, before she developed sophisticated strategies for earning love rather than simply receiving it. The breakthrough culminates in Elena's recognition that she has choices she hasn't been making consciously. She can continue selecting partners based on familiar patterns of unavailability, or she can begin choosing people based on their capacity for the kind of love she actually wants to experience. This recognition transforms her from passive participant in unconscious patterns to active creator of her romantic reality. Elena's nervous system settles into a new baseline as the breakthrough integrates. The anxiety that has characterized her romantic life, constantly monitoring others' availability, working to earn attention, managing relationship dynamics, begins subsiding as she recognizes these behaviors as symptoms of choosing incompatible partners rather than evidence of her own inadequacy. She feels the profound calm that comes from no longer needing to pursue what isn't freely offered. Walking back toward her cottage as morning mist lifts from tide pools, Elena carries within her a fundamental shift in her understanding of love. She recognizes that the intensity she's mistaken for passion has often been anxiety about inconsistent availability, that the excitement she's experienced in pursuit has been stress response rather than genuine attraction, that the complexity she's found appealing has often been dysfunction disguised as depth. Elena's breakthrough moment concludes with a deep understanding that healing her attachment patterns doesn't require finding perfect partners, but rather developing the capacity to recognize and choose people who are capable of secure connection. She realizes her work isn't to fix others or earn their availability, but to become available to herself and select partners who can meet her at that level of presence and authenticity. 6 months into her transformation journey, Elena's daily life reflects the deep internal shifts that have reorganized her approach to relationships and self-connection. Her morning ritual now begins not with checking for messages from inconsistently available partners, but with a gentle internal attunement practice where she notices her emotions, energy levels, and authentic desires for the day ahead. This simple shift creates a foundation of self-connection that influences every subsequent interaction. Elena's cottage undergoes subtle but significant changes that mirror her internal transformation. The museum-like perfection that once protected her from too much intimacy softens into comfortable beauty that invites genuine connection. She removes barriers that kept visitors at emotional distance, replacing formal seating arrangements with cozy conversation areas, adding personal photographs that reveal her inner world, creating spaces that encourage authentic presence rather than perform politeness. Her approach to dating transforms completely as Elena begins selecting potential partners based on their capacity for emotional availability rather than their ability to trigger familiar pursuit behaviors. When she meets Thomas, a marine conservation photographer, whose work brings him to Luminous Cove. She evaluates their interaction through entirely new criteria. Instead of assessing his mystique or analyzing mixed signals, she notices his consistent communication, his genuine curiosity about her inner world, his ability to be present during vulnerable conversations. Elena's response to Thomas is straightforward. Interest initially triggers her old patterns. Her system associates his availability with lack of complexity or excitement. Yet rather than immediately dismissing him, she recognizes this response as her nervous system's attempt to maintain familiar patterns. She practices tolerating the discomfort of his consistent presence, using their interactions as opportunities to retrain her attachment responses towards security rather than anxiety. Their first several dates reveal Elena's growing capacity for authentic self-expression. Instead of presenting the carefully edited version of herself designed to be appealing yet undemanding, she shares her genuine thoughts, feelings, and preferences. When Thomas suggests a restaurant she dislikes, Elena practices expressing her preference for a different location. When he asks about her relationship history, she offers honest insights about her pattern of choosing unavailable partners rather than deflecting with humor or intellectualization. Most remarkably, Elena begins experiencing what Dr. Jung had described as the nervous system calm of secure attachment. With Thomas, she doesn't feel compelled to monitor his emotional availability because he demonstrates it consistently through actions that match his words. She doesn't need to strategize how to maintain his interest because he expresses appreciation for her authentic self rather than requiring her to perform or earn his attention. Elena's professional life also reflects her transformation as she approaches her marine research with renewed passion and purpose. Her study of organisms that thrive versus merely survive in various conditions takes on deeper meaning as she applies these insights to her own life. She begins developing research protocols that examine not just survival adaptations, but optimal growth conditions, paralleling her personal journey from surviving on emotional scraps to requiring nourishing relationships. Her interactions with colleagues evolve as Elena practices the healthy interdependence she's learning in her romantic relationship. Instead of automatically offering help while deflecting support, she begins accepting assistance with work projects, sharing professional challenges without immediately moving to support others, allowing herself to be seen in both competence and vulnerability. These changes create more authentic professional relationships while reducing the exhaustion that came from constant emotional giving without receiving. Elena's friendship dynamics undergo significant recalibration as she begins expecting from friends the same emotional reciprocity she now requires in romantic relationships. When her friend Sarah consistently cancels plans at the last minute, Elena addresses this pattern directly rather than accommodating indefinitely. Some friendships deepen through these honest conversations, while others naturally fade as Elena's increased boundaries reveal incompatibilities that have been masked by her previous over-accommodation. The most profound shift occurs in Elena's relationship with herself. She develops what she calls internal availability, the capacity to be present with her own emotions without immediately analyzing, fixing, or suppressing them. When sadness arises about her years of accepting inadequate treatment in relationships, she allows the grief without rushing toward forgiveness or understanding. When excitement emerges about new possibilities for love, she celebrates without immediately tempering the joy with realistic expectations. Elena's nervous system continues healing through her relationship with Thomas, who provides the consistent availability her early attachment system never experienced. His reliable presence during both comfortable and difficult moments gradually teaches her system that emotional expression doesn't create withdrawal. That authenticity enhances rather than threatens connection. That her needs are reasonable requests rather than burdensome demands. Their first conflict becomes a pivotal moment in Elena's transformation. When Thomas expresses frustration about her tendency to withdraw when stressed, a remnant of her old pattern of protecting others from her emotional needs, Elena's initial impulse is to minimize his concern and accommodate his preference. Instead, she practices staying present with the discomfort of being seen in an unflattering moment while explaining her protective pattern and her commitment to changing it. Thomas's response, curiosity rather than judgment, support rather than criticism, provides her nervous system with new data about how healthy relationships navigate challenges. Elena begins experiencing emotions she's forgotten were possible. In romantic relationships, the peace of not needing to earn love, the joy of being appreciated for authenticity rather than performance, the relief of expressing needs without fear of abandonment, the excitement of discovering someone who can match her emotional depth rather than being overwhelmed by it. These feelings initially feel almost too good to trust, yet their consistency gradually convinces her nervous system of their reliability. Her living space continues evolving to reflect her internal changes. Elena creates a meditation corner where she practices self-attunement, replaces books on relationship analysis with literature that feeds her soul, displays photographs from adventures with Thomas that capture moments of genuine joy and connection. Her environment begins supporting the person she's becoming rather than the protective identity she maintained for survival. Elena's relationship with her professional passion deepens as she recognizes how her study of marine resilience has prepared her for understanding human emotional adaptation. She begins developing research that examines not just how organisms survive difficult conditions, but how they thrive when those conditions improve. This work becomes a metaphor for her own journey and offers insights that could help others navigate similar attachment healing. The integration of Elena's transformation appears in subtle daily moments. The ease with which she expresses preferences, the comfort she feels with Thomas's consistent availability, the genuine smile that replaces her performed pleasantness, the way she moves through her world without the hypervigilance that characterized her years of monitoring others' emotional availability. These changes represent not dramatic personality shifts, but the emergence of her authentic self. No longer hidden behind protective strategies, Elena realizes that her capacity for deep love, which she once saw as a liability that scared away partners, is actually her greatest gift when shared with someone capable of receiving and reciprocating it. With Thomas, her emotional depth becomes a source of connection rather than distance. Her vulnerability creates intimacy rather than withdrawal. Her authenticity is cherished rather than managed. As autumn transforms the coastal landscape of luminous Cove, Elena embodies the wisdom she's gained through her attachment healing journey in ways that permeate every aspect of her being. Her internal dialogue, once dominated by analysis of others' emotional availability and strategies for earning love, now reflects self-compassion and authentic self-advocacy. The harsh inner critic that once blamed her for repeatedly choosing unavailable partners has been replaced by a gentle internal voice that guides her toward choices aligned with her true desires and needs. Elena's emotional regulation has evolved from the sophisticated suppression systems she developed in childhood to genuine skills for processing and expressing feelings in healthy ways. When disappointment arises, whether professional, personal, or relational, she no longer automatically minimizes the emotion or rushes toward intellectual understanding. Instead, she allows herself to feel disappointment fully while providing the comfort and validation she once sought exclusively from others. This internal emotional availability creates a foundation of security that influences all her relationships. Her approach to boundaries represents perhaps the most profound embodiment of her transformation. Elena has learned to distinguish between healthy boundaries that protect her well-being, and the walls she once built to prevent emotional intimacy. With Thomas, she practices expressing limits that maintain her individual identity while remaining open to deep connection. When work demands threaten to overwhelm her personal time, she communicates her needs clearly rather than silently accommodating until resentment builds. When friends request the support during personal crises, she offers genuine care while maintaining awareness of her own emotional capacity. Elena's relationship with vulnerability has transformed from something to be carefully managed and strategically revealed to a natural expression of authenticity in relationships that can handle depth. She recognizes that vulnerability shared with emotionally available people creates intimacy, while vulnerability offered to unavailable people becomes exploitation. This discernment allows her to remain open-hearted while protecting herself from relationships that cannot reciprocate her emotional investment. The wisdom embodied in Elena's daily choices reflects her integration of healthy attachment patterns. She no longer tolerates inconsistent communication as mysterious or intriguing, but recognizes it as information about someone's capacity for reliable connection. She doesn't interpret having to pursue someone's attention as romantic challenge, but as evidence of mismatched availability levels. She's learned to trust her nervous system's responses, calm and ease with available partners, anxiety and activation with unavailable ones, as accurate information about compatibility rather than neuroses to be managed. Elena's professional relationships demonstrate her new capacity for healthy interdependence. She collaborates with colleagues as equals rather than constantly offering support while deflecting reciprocal care. When presenting research at conferences, she shares both her expertise and her uncertainties, allowing others to see her full professional self rather than a perfected version designed to earn approval. Her willingness to be seen in both competence and vulnerability creates more authentic professional connections while reducing the exhaustion that accompanied her previous performance-based approach. Her friendship with Sarah deepens as Elena practices the emotional reciprocity she's learned in her romantic relationship. When Sarah shares relationship difficulties, Elena offers genuine support while also sharing her own growth and challenges. Their conversations become truly bidirectional, rather than Elena consistently serving as emotional caretaker while hiding her own needs. This shift initially creates discomfort for both women, as their dynamic had been organized around Elena's overgiving and under-receiving. Yet the new balance creates more satisfying connection for both. Elena's wisdom appears most clearly in her response to Jonathan's attempt to reconnect after several months of minimal contact. When he reaches out with casual charm, suggesting they catch up over dinner, Elena recognizes this overture as an opportunity to practice her new relationship standards. Instead of feeling flattered by his renewed attention or analyzing what might have prompted his contact, she clearly communicates that she's now in a committed relationship with someone who provides the consistency she values. Jonathan's immediate shift to trying to undermine her new relationship provides perfect confirmation of his emotional unavailability and manipulative tendencies. Elena's embodied wisdom extends to her relationship with her own desires and dreams. She begins planning a research expedition to study coral reef restoration, a project that excites her professionally while requiring her to advocate for funding and recognition rather than waiting for opportunities to be offered. This shift from passive hoping to active creation reflects her integration of healthy self-advocacy skills learned through attachment healing. Her physical relationship with Thomas demonstrates Elena's growing comfort with emotional and sexual intimacy when offered within secure attachment. Her body, which once held chronic tension from monitoring others' availability, relaxes into the pleasure of consistent presence and mutual desire. She discovers that sexual intimacy becomes more satisfying when not complicated by anxiety about earning or maintaining her partner's interest. The simplicity of mutual availability allows for depth and authenticity in physical connection that was impossible when relationships were organized around pursuit and withdrawal dynamics. Elena's wisdom embodiment includes sophisticated discernment about different types of unavailability. She recognizes the difference between temporary unavailability due to legitimate circumstances, illness, work deadlines, family crises, and chronic emotional unavailability that reflects someone's incapacity for intimate connection. She learns to respond to situational unavailability with understanding while maintaining clear boundaries around consistent patterns of distance or inconsistency. Her integration includes the ability to hold compassion for her former attachment patterns while maintaining commitment to her current growth. Elena understands that her attraction to unavailable partners served important protective functions during her development, and she honors these adaptations while no longer allowing them to govern her relationship choices. This self-compassion prevents the shame cycles that might otherwise undermine her progress. Elena's wisdom appears in her approach to conflict resolution with Thomas. When disagreements arise, she doesn't immediately accommodate his perspective or withdraw to avoid confrontation. Instead, she practices staying present with the discomfort of differing viewpoints while working toward mutual understanding. There, conflicts become opportunities for deeper intimacy rather than threats to relationship stability, demonstrating how secure attachment transforms challenging moments into connection. Her embodied transformation extends to Elena's relationship with her family patterns. During her parents' visit to Luminous Cove, she maintains loving connection while no longer accommodating her father's emotional unavailability or her mother's anxiety about relationship dynamics. She expresses affection while setting boundaries around topics and behaviors that trigger her old patterns. Her parents notice her increased confidence and authenticity, even if they don't understand the internal work that has created these changes. Elena's professional presentations begin incorporating insights from her personal healing journey, sharing research about marine organism resilience while drawing parallels to human adaptation and growth. Her work becomes more impactful as she integrates personal wisdom with professional expertise, creating presentations that inform scientific understanding while inspiring possibilities for transformation. The transformation Elena has undergone through healing her attachment patterns creates expanding circles of positive change that extend far beyond her personal relationships, demonstrating how individual healing contributes to collective well-being. Her journey from accepting emotional unavailability to requiring secure connection becomes a catalyst for healing in her community, inspiring others to examine their own relationship patterns and consider new possibilities for love and connection. Thomas, experiencing his first secure adult relationship through their partnership, begins questioning his own historical tendency toward emotional distance in challenging moments. Elena's consistent presence during his difficult periods, when work stress increases or family conflicts arise, teaches his nervous system that emotional support enhances rather than threatens his autonomy. Their relationship becomes a laboratory for discovering how interdependence differs from codependence, how emotional availability creates freedom rather than restriction. Elena's friendship with Sarah undergoes profound transformation as both women practice the emotional reciprocity Elena has learned through her attachment healing. Sarah begins recognizing her own pattern of seeking support while struggling to receive it, realizing how Elena's previous overgiving enabled her own emotional underdevelopment. Their friendship becomes more balanced and satisfying as both women practice authentic exchange of care and support, creating a template for healthy female friendship that influences their relationships with other women. At the Marine Research Laboratory, Elena's colleagues notice subtle but significant changes in team dynamics as Elena models healthy professional boundaries and authentic self-expression. Her willingness to express disagreement with research methodologies, previously masked by her people-pleasing tendencies, leads to improved study designs and more innovative approaches to marine conservation. Her example encourages other team members to share their authentic perspectives rather than deferring to perceived authority figures. Elena's transformation influences her mentoring relationship with graduate student Maya, who initially seeks Elena's guidance about research techniques, but gradually reveals her own struggles with romantic relationships that mirror Elena's former patterns. Instead of offering advice or analysis, Elena shares her own journey with appropriate boundaries, describing how she learned to recognize the difference between love and anxiety, security and excitement, authentic attraction, and familiar stress. Responses. Maya begins questioning her own tolerance for inconsistent treatment from romantic partners. The ripple effects extend to Elena's extended family as her parents witness their daughter's increased confidence and authentic self-expression. During family gatherings, her father, confronted with Elena's loving but clear boundaries around his emotional unavailability, begins examining his own relationship patterns for the first time. Her mother, observing Elena's secure partnership with Thomas, starts questioning whether her own tolerance for her husband's distance has been adaptive or limiting. These family conversations, while sometimes uncomfortable, plant seeds for multi-generational healing. Elena's professional presentations at scientific conferences incorporate insights about resilience and adaptation that inspire audience members to consider applications beyond marine biology. A psychologist attending one of her talks approaches her afterward, sharing how Elena's research parallels her own observations about human attachment patterns. This conversation leads to collaborative research examining similarities between organism adaptation strategies and human relationship patterns, creating interdisciplinary approaches to understanding resilience. Local community members in Luminous Cove observe the changes in Elena's energy and presence, noting her increased authenticity and decreased anxiety. The meditation group she occasionally attends benefits from her willingness to share vulnerable experiences while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Her example of transformation without dramatic personality overhaul inspires others to consider that change can be gentle yet profound, that healing doesn't require abandoning one's essential nature, but rather uncovering it. Elena's relationship with Thomas creates visible evidence in their community that secure attachment is possible between adults who have experienced early relational wounds. Their partnership demonstrates how two people can maintain individual identities while creating deep interdependence. How conflict can enhance rather than threaten intimacy. How emotional availability actually increases rather than decreases personal freedom. Other couples observe their dynamic and begin questioning their own normalized patterns of distance or unhealthy enmeshment. The marine research Elena conducts begins incorporating questions about optimal growth conditions rather than merely survival. Adaptations, reflecting her personal understanding that thriving differs fundamentally from surviving. This research generates insights applicable to human development, environmental policy, and therapeutic interventions. Her work contributes to scientific literature while serving as metaphor for human potential when provided with secure, supportive conditions. Elena's transformation influences the broader conversation about women's relationship patterns as she begins sharing her insights through blog posts and community talks. Her message that women deserve emotional availability rather than having to earn it challenges cultural narratives that romanticize pursuit of unavailable partners. Our emphasis on nervous system healing rather than willpower or better choices provides accessible frameworks for other women beginning their own attachment healing journeys. The ripple effects reach into future generations through Elena's mentoring relationships with young women entering scientific careers. By modeling emotional availability alongside professional competence, she demonstrates the depth and vulnerability enhance rather than undermine professional effectiveness. Her example challenges the false choice between personal fulfillment and career success that many young women face. Elena's cottage becomes an informal gathering place for friends and colleagues seeking authentic connection. As her space now radiates the emotional safety she has cultivated internally, conversations in her home tend toward depth and authenticity, as Elena's presence encourages others to drop social performance in favor of genuine expression. These gatherings create community around values of emotional availability and authentic connection. The transformation creates positive changes in Elena's consumer choices and lifestyle decisions as she begins supporting businesses and activities that align with her values of authenticity and emotional availability. She chooses local establishments where owners create genuine community rather than merely providing services, supporting a local economy that prioritizes relationship over pure profit. Her choices contribute to a community culture that values depth over surface, authenticity over performance. Elena's journey influences broader cultural conversations about emotional availability and healthy relationships through her growing willingness to share her story. When appropriate, she discusses her transformation with honesty that helps normalize attachment, healing while maintaining privacy about specific details. Her openness contributes to reducing stigma around therapy, self-examination, and the courage required to change deep patterns that no longer serve growth. Most significantly, the ripple effects of Elena's transformation demonstrate how individual healing contributes to collective well-being. Her journey from accepting emotional unavailability to creating secure connection provides a template that inspires others to examine their own patterns and consider new possibilities for love that nourish rather than deplete, connections that support growth rather than trigger old wounds. Relationships that honor both autonomy and intimacy as complementary rather than conflicting values. 1 year into her transformation journey, Elena enters the delicate process of integrating the shadow aspects of her attachment patterns, those parts of herself she had disowned or projected onto others in her quest for emotional healing. This integration phase requires embracing the complexity of her humanity rather than seeking simple resolution, accepting that her capacity for deep love includes potential for manipulation, that her empathy contains elements of control, that her independence masks both strength and offended vulnerability. Elena begins recognizing how her attraction to emotionally unavailable partners served not only protective functions, but also allowed her to maintain sole control in relationships. By choosing partners incapable of deep emotional presence, she ensured she would never have to fully surrender to love's transformative power, never have to risk complete vulnerability, never have to discover whether she could be loved for her authentic self rather than her carefully curated presentation. This recognition initially brings shame, then gradually transforms into compassionate understanding of her system's sophisticated protective strategies. She acknowledges the way she participated in creating the very dynamics she found frustrating, recognizing how her over-functioning in relationships enabled partners under-functioning, how her tolerance for emotional breadcrumbs taught others she would accept minimal effort, how her fear of being too much caused her to accept too little from others. This shadow integration doesn't involve self-blame, but rather honest recognition of her unconscious contributions to relationship patterns that served hidden protective purposes. Elena explores her own capacity for emotional unavailability, recognizing times when she withdrew behind intellectual analysis, when partners sought genuine emotional connection, Moments when she used her independence as a weapon to create distance when intimacy felt threatening. Instances when she punished others for the very availability she claimed to desire because it triggered her deepest fears of being truly seen. These recognitions allow her to approach others' unavailability with greater compassion while maintaining clear boundaries about what she will accept. The shadow work reveals Elena's sophisticated emotional manipulation strategies, developed unconsciously, to maintain connection while avoiding vulnerability. She recognizes how she used her empathic abilities to manage others' emotions, how she provided support strategically to earn gratitude and attachment, how she positioned herself as indispensable to avoid abandonment. Acknowledging these shadow dynamics allows her to distinguish between authentic caring and unconscious control strategies in her current relationships. Elena integrates her capacity for both independence and dependence, recognizing that her hyper-independence served as defense against natural human interdependence, while her hidden dependence on others' approval guided many of her relationship choices. True integration involves accepting her human need for connection without shame, while maintaining individual identity without defensiveness. This balance allows for genuine intimacy that doesn't threaten autonomy or require abandonment of self. She embraces her full emotional range, including anger, jealousy, possessiveness, and other feelings she previously judged as incompatible with being a good partner. Elena discovers that expressing these emotions authentically within secure relationship actually enhances intimacy rather than threatening it, while suppressing them creates underground manipulation and passive-aggressive behaviors that damage connection. Thomas's ability to receive her complete emotional spectrum without withdrawal validates her integration process. Elena's shadow integration includes accepting her own occasional emotional unavailability times when stress, illness, or personal processing requires temporary withdrawal from relational engagement. She learns to communicate these needs clearly rather than disappearing without explanation, and to distinguish between temporary unavailability due to circumstances and chronic patterns of emotional distance. This integration allows her to extend similar understanding to others while maintaining discernment about consistent patterns versus occasional limitations. The integration process reveals Elena's capacity for both healing and wounding recognition, that her empathic gifts can be used for connection or manipulation, that her intelligence can serve understanding or control, that her independence can represent strength or defended vulnerability. Accepting this complexity allows her to approach relationships with greater humility and authenticity, recognizing that she too is capable of causing harm while maintaining commitment to conscious relating. Elena integrates her attraction to both available and unavailable partners, understanding that different aspects of her psyche seek different types of connection. Her healing involves expanding her capacity to find excitement and passion within secure relationships, rather than requiring anxiety and uncertainty to feel alive. She practices generating internal aliveness rather than depending on relationship drama to feel engaged with life. The shadow integration culminates in Elena's acceptance of her full humanity, her capacity for both selfless love and selfish protection, authentic vulnerability and sophisticated manipulation, generous giving, and strategic withholding. This integration doesn't represent moral relativism, but rather recognition that wholeness includes contradictions. That maturity involves conscious choice about which aspects of herself to express in various circumstances. That authentic relationship requires showing up as complete human beings rather than idealized versions of ourselves. Through shadow integration, Elena develops genuine compassion for both herself and others as imperfect beings doing their best to love and be loved within the limitations of their conditioning and circumstances. This compassion becomes the foundation for relationships that can hold complexity, conflict, and growth rather than requiring perfection or performance. As Elena's attachment healing deepens, beyond psychological understanding into spiritual integration, she begins experiencing what can only be described as soul alignment, a profound harmony between her deepest authentic self and her lived reality that extends far beyond romantic relationships into every aspect of her existence. This alignment represents not the achievement of perfection, but the embodiment of wholeness, where her choices, relationships, and life direction flow from her essential nature rather than protective adaptations. Elena's work with marine organisms transforms from career into calling as she recognizes her deep soul connection to the healing of oceanic ecosystems. Her research takes on sacred dimensions as she understands herself as steward of ancient underwater worlds, her scientific methodology becoming a form of prayer through careful attention, her data collection serving the larger purpose of planetary healing. This integration of personal healing with professional purpose creates meaning that transcends individual accomplishment. Her relationship with Thomas evolves beyond personal satisfaction into a vehicle for mutual soul evolution. They recognize their partnership as opportunity for both individuals to become more fully themselves through loving connection. Their conflicts as invitations for spiritual growth rather than threats to stability. Their intimacy as sacred space where two souls meet without masks or defensive strategies. Their love becomes transformative force that serves not only their individual healing, but contributes to the collective evolution of consciousness around healthy relationship. Elena's connection to the coastal landscape of Luminous Cove deepens into mystical relationship with the natural world. Her morning walks along tide pools become moving meditations where she experiences direct communion with the intelligence that animates all life. She begins understanding her early attraction to unavailable partners as soul lesson designed to teach her about her own infinite worth. Her healing journey as service to ancestral patterns requiring resolution. Her current capacity for secure love as gift meant to be shared. The soul alignment manifests in Elena's growing intuitive abilities to sense the emotional availability of potential partners immediately upon meeting them. Her nervous system, no longer clouded by projections and fantasies, becomes finely tuned instrument for detecting authentic capacity for intimate connection. This discernment operates beyond mental analysis through somatic knowing that guides her toward relationships that serve her highest good, while naturally filtering out connections that would replicate old patterns. Elena's spiritual practice evolved from seeking healing for personal wounds into gratitude for the profound wisdom gained through her journey of attachment transformation. She recognizes that her pattern of choosing unavailable partners, while painful, served the essential function of developing her capacity for unconditional self-love, emotional self-regulation, and discernment about healthy relationship dynamics. Her suffering becomes meaningful as preparation for her current capacity to love and be loved authentically. Her creative expression begins flowing through her scientific work as Elena develops innovative research methodologies that honor both rigorous analysis and intuitive understanding of marine ecosystems. She begins publishing papers that bridge scientific objectivity with poetic insight, contributing to emerging paradigms that integrate rational and experiential ways of knowing. Her work becomes artistic expression of her soul's purpose rather than merely professional achievement. Elena's relationships with family members transform as she approaches them from soul alignment rather than wounded childhood patterns. She maintains loving connection with her parents while no longer seeking from them the emotional availability they cannot provide. Her interactions become opportunities to model healthy boundaries and authentic expression rather than attempts to heal old wounds through current dynamics. This shift creates space for genuine appreciation of her parents' gifts, while accepting their limitations with compassion. The alignment extends to Elena's relationship with time and natural rhythms as she learns to honor her soul's need for both solitude and connection, activity and rest, giving and receiving. She structures her life according to internal seasons rather than external demands, allowing periods of intensive work to be balanced by times of contemplation and renewal. This attunement to natural cycles creates sustainable life patterns that support long-term well-being rather than demanding constant performance. Elena's soul alignment manifests in her growing capacity to trust life's unfolding rather than controlling outcomes through effort and strategy. She approaches new relationships, professional opportunities, and creative projects with open curiosity rather than agenda-driven pursuit. This trust allows for synchronicities and organic developments that serve her highest good in ways her planning mind could never orchestrate. Her integration includes recognition of her soul purpose as bridge between scientific understanding and spiritual wisdom, contributing to humanity's evolution toward more conscious relationship with both natural world and each other. Elena understands her personal healing journey as preparation for larger service. Her transformation from accepting unavailability to requiring security as template that can inspire others seeking similar healing. The soul alignment culminates in Elena's experience of profound belonging to herself, to her relationships, to her community, to the natural world, to the larger web of existence that connects all beings. This belonging represents the fulfillment of her deepest attachment longings through spiritual connection that transcends while including human relationship. In the deepest phase of Elena's transformation, she enters territories of transcendent connection that dissolve the boundaries between personal healing and universal love, where her journey from accepting emotional unavailability to embodying secure attachment becomes portal into mystical understanding of the nature of connection itself. This transcendence represents not escape from human relationship, but fulfillment of its highest potential through direct experience of the love that underlies all existence. Elena begins experiencing moments during her marine research when the boundaries between observer and observed dissolve, when she feels herself merging with the ocean ecosystem she studies. These mystical experiences reveal the interconnectedness that exists beneath apparent separation, showing her that the love she sought in romantic relationships is actually the fundamental fabric of reality itself. Her healing journey becomes recognition that she was never truly separate from love, but had simply forgotten her essential nature. During meditation at sunrise over tide pools, Elena experiences what mystics throughout history have described as union with the beloved, a direct knowing of herself as both lover and loved, seeker and sought, the one who desires connection and the very love she desires. This realization transforms her understanding of romantic relationship from attempt to get love from another person to opportunity to express and experience the love that she essentially is. Her relationship with Thomas evolves into sacred partnership, where both individuals recognize their connection as expression of universal love rather than merely personal attraction. Their intimacy becomes doorway into experiencing divine love through human form. Their conflicts opportunities to practice unconditional love in challenging circumstances. Their daily interactions reminders of the sacred nature of all encounter. They serve as mirrors reflecting each other's divine essence, while maintaining individual human personalities. Elena's work with marine organisms reveals itself as form of devotional practice, where scientific observation becomes act of worship. Data collection becomes meditation on life's infinite creativity. Research findings become hymns celebrating the intelligence that animates all existence. Her professional contributions serve not only scientific advancement, but spiritual awakening for those who encounter her work, bridging rational and mystical approaches to understanding life. The transcendent connection manifests in Elena's growing awareness of her participation in larger patterns of healing that extend across generations and cultures. She recognizes her personal attachment transformation as part of humanity's collective evolution toward more conscious relationship. Her individual healing as contribution to ancestral line healing, her capacity for secure love as gift that serves. The emergence of higher consciousness on Earth. Elena begins experiencing the presence of divine love in ordinary moments: sunlight reflecting on water, wind moving through coastal grasses, the sound of Thomas's breathing while he sleeps, the texture of sand beneath her feet during morning walks. These everyday encounters become opportunities for communion with the sacred, demonstrations that transcendent love is available. Through full presence with immediate experience rather than special spiritual states, her compassion expands to encompass not only those who struggle with attachment wounds, but also those who cause them, recognizing that everyone's behavior emerges from their own unhealed wounds and limited understanding of love's true nature. Elena's response to her father's continued emotional unavailability transforms from disappointment to compassion as she recognizes his limitations as expressions of his own unhealed attachment trauma rather than verdicts on her worthiness. The transcendent connection includes Elena's growing ability to love others without needing them to love her back in specific ways, to offer authentic presence without requiring reciprocal availability, to maintain open heart even when others remain defended. This unconditional love doesn't mean accepting inappropriate treatment, but rather responding to others' limitations from spacious compassion rather than wounded reactivity. Elena's experience of transcendent connection culminates in recognition that the secure attachment she spent years developing in human relationships reflects universal patterns of connection that exist at cosmic levels. She understands that her healing journey was preparation for serving as channel for divine love. Her transformed nervous system as instrument for transmitting higher frequencies of connection and healing to others ready to receive them. In moments of deepest transcendence, Elena experiences herself as temporary individualized expression of eternal love. Her human relationships as opportunities for this love to know itself through connection. Her attachment healing as remembering of her true nature rather than acquisition of new capacities. This recognition brings profound peace as she understands that love was never something to be earned or achieved, but only remembered and expressed. As our story reaches its natural completion, Elena stands once again at her favorite tide pool. Yet everything has transformed through the alchemy of conscious healing. The same coastal landscape that once mirrored her internal confusion now reflects the clarity and peace she has cultivated through her attachment transformation journey. The sea anemone she observed for months, once perpetually closed and protective, responds to threats that no longer existed, now opens and closes naturally in rhythm with the tides, demonstrating the flexibility that comes from feeling genuinely safe. Elena's cottage, visible on the bluff above, glows with warm light as Thomas prepares dinner, their evening ritual representing the secure base she once thought existed only in psychology textbooks. Their relationship has become living proof that adults can heal attachment wounds through conscious partnership. That love can be both passionate and peaceful, exciting and secure, deeply intimate and respectfully boundaried. The Marine Research Laboratory, where Elena conducts her groundbreaking work, studying optimal growth conditions for sea organisms, reflects her own journey from surviving to thriving. Her research contributions serve not only scientific advancement, but inspiration for countless others seeking to understand how healing environments support flourishing rather than mere survival. Her work bridges the wisdom gained from personal transformation with professional expertise, creating ripples of healing that extend far beyond her individual story. Elena's relationship with her family has evolved into loving acceptance of what is while no longer seeking what cannot be provided. Her parents visit annually, and while her father remains emotionally distant, and her mother continues managing anxiety through relationship focus, Elena experiences these dynamics without the old wounds being triggered. She offers love without expecting it to be returned in forms they cannot provide, demonstrating the freedom that comes from internal rather than external security. The coastal community of Luminous Cove has been enriched by Elena's transformation, as her authentic presence and emotional availability inspire others to examine their own relationship patterns. Friends and colleagues witness her peaceful confidence and wonder what creates such inner stability. Her willingness to share her healing journey, when appropriate, offers hope to others trapped in similar patterns of accepting emotional unavailability. Most profoundly, Elena has discovered that the love she spent years seeking from others was always available within her own being. Her attachment healing revealed not new capacities, but remembrance of her essential nature as love itself, temporarily individualized in human form. This recognition transforms all her relationships from attempts to get love to opportunities for expressing love. From projects requiring management to gifts, deserving gratitude. As Elena's story settles into the depths of your awareness like sediment finding its natural resting place in still water, recognize that her journey illuminates possibilities that exist within your own experience. The patterns she discovered, the healing she accessed, the transformation she embodied, all reflect potentials lying dormant within your own consciousness, waiting for the right conditions to emerge and flourish. Elena's nervous system learned to distinguish between love and anxiety, security and excitement, authentic attraction and familiar stress responses. Your own nervous system possesses this same capacity for discernment, this same ability to update old programming through new experiences of secure connection. The wisdom Elena gained through conscious relationship building exists as possibility within your own relational future. Her journey from accepting emotional unavailability to requiring secure attachment represents choices available to you in this very moment. Like Elena, you can begin noticing whether your romantic attractions arise from nervous system calm or activation, whether your relationship patterns serve growth or maintain familiar protective strategies, whether your standards reflect your worth or accommodate others' limitations. The love Elena discovered through healing her attachment wounds, the capacity for both giving and receiving authentic affection, the peace of not monitoring others' availability, the joy of being appreciated for authenticity rather than performance. These experiences await you as you practice the courage required for conscious relationship choices. Elena's transformation reminds you that changing deep patterns requires patience, self-compassion, and willingness to tolerate discomfort as familiar strategies dissolve and new possibilities emerge. Her story demonstrates that healing happens not through force or willpower, but through gentle awareness meeting committed action, through honoring protective patterns while gradually releasing what no longer serves growth. As sleep begins embracing your consciousness, allow Elena's journey to become template for your own healing, her discoveries to inspire your own examination of relationship patterns, her courage to awaken your own willingness to require the love you deserve. And now, as this healing story comes to its gentle completion, your body begins its own natural journey toward the restorative sanctuary of sleep. Like the tide pools Elena studied, which rest peacefully between the ocean's rhythmic visits, your consciousness prepares to enter the quiet spaces where deep healing occurs beyond the reach of waking awareness. Your breathing naturally deepens and slows, following the rhythm of waves against shore, each exhale releasing any tension or effort from the day, each inhale drawing in the peace and wisdom that Elena discovered through her transformation. Your nervous system, having received new templates for secure attachment through story, begins integrating these possibilities at cellular levels where lasting change occurs. Feel your body sinking into Your bed like Elena resting in her cottage. Sanctuary, supported by the solid foundation she created through conscious relationship choices. Your muscles soften and release, no longer needing to carry the hypervigilance that monitors others' emotional availability. Your heart rate slows to the calm rhythm of secure attachment, trusting that love exists both within you and around you. Your mind, having followed Elena's journey from confusion to clarity, naturally quiets as understanding settles into place. The answers you seek about relationship patterns and healing possibilities exist within your own wisdom, accessible through the gentle awareness Elena demonstrated. Sleep becomes opportunity for your unconscious mind to weave together insights from her story with your own lived experience. As consciousness fades toward dreams, carry with you Elena's most important discovery, that you are inherently worthy of secure, available, deeply nourishing love. This truth integrates with your sleeping mind, creating new neural pathways that will influence your choices and attractions in waking life. Allow sleep to embrace you completely now, trusting that Elena's healing journey continues working within your awareness, preparing you for your own transformation from accepting unavailability to embodying the secure love that is your birthright. Rest deeply, dream peacefully, heal gently. In the months that followed Elena's profound transformation, the ripples of her healing journey continued expanding through dimensions both seen and unseen, creating patterns of positive change that reached far beyond her individual experience into the collective fabric of human consciousness, evolving toward more conscious love. Elena's research laboratory became an unexpected pilgrimage site for fellow scientists seeking not only her expertise in marine biology, but her embodied wisdom about resilience, adaptation, and the conditions that support flourishing rather than mere survival. Colleagues from universities around the world began incorporating her methodologies that examined optimal growth environments rather than focusing exclusively on survival adaptations. Her approach to studying sea organisms with patient presence, genuine curiosity, and respect for natural rhythms became template for more conscious scientific inquiry that honored both rigorous analysis and intuitive understanding. The marine sanctuary Elena had helped establish grew into a model for environmental restoration that integrated cutting-edge science with indigenous wisdom about relationship between human consciousness and ecological health. Visitors to the sanctuary experienced not only educational programs about ocean conservation, but transformative encounters with the interconnectedness that Elena had discovered through her personal healing journey. The sanctuary's success demonstrated how individual consciousness work contributes directly to planetary healing, how personal attachment security creates capacity for secure relationship with the natural world. Thomas's photography, inspired by his partnership with Elena, began capturing images that revealed the sacred geometry underlying natural formations, the mathematical precision in shell spirals, the fractal patterns in coral formations, the perfect symmetry in tide pool arrangements. His exhibitions, titled Love Made Visible, drew audiences who experienced aesthetic beauty as spiritual awakening, recognizing in his photographs the same divine intelligence that Elena had discovered operating through her attachment healing. Their collaborative work bridged science and art, demonstrating how secure partnership becomes creative force that serves beauty and truth. Elena's friendship with Sarah deepened into spiritual companionship as both women practiced the emotional reciprocity and authentic vulnerability Elena had learned through attachment healing. Their monthly gatherings at Elena's cottage became informal healing circles where other women joined them in exploring relationship patterns, practicing boundary setting, and supporting each other's courage to require the love they deserved. These gatherings generated such profound transformation that they evolved into formal workshops Sarah led in her therapy practice, creating communities of women committed to conscious relationship and mutual empowerment. The ripple effects reached across generations as Elena's relationship with her aging parents transformed into opportunities for healing ancestral patterns. Her father, witnessing Elena's peaceful confidence and secure partnership, began examining his own emotional unavailability for the first time in his 70-year life. Their conversations, while still limited by his capacity, carried new depth, as Elena's presence invited authenticity without demanding it. Her mother, observing Elena's ability to maintain loving connection without accommodating dysfunction, slowly began setting boundaries in her own marriage that had seemed impossible before witnessing her daughter's example. Elena's professional presentations evolved into multi-sensory experiences that engaged both intellectual understanding and somatic wisdom. She began incorporating guided meditations, nervous system regulation techniques, and embodied practices that helped audience members experience secure attachment principles rather than merely learning about them. Conference organizers noted unprecedented feedback from attendees who described her sessions as life-changing and healing rather than simply informative. Her approach inspired other speakers to consider how professional presentations could serve transformation rather than only information transfer. The cottage, Elena shared with Thomas, became an unofficial retreat center where friends, colleagues, and even strangers drawn by word of mouth arrived seeking the peace and authenticity they sensed radiating from this place. Elena and Thomas established monthly open houses where anyone could experience the nervous system calm of secure attachment through simple presence in their home environment. These gatherings required no formal teaching or therapeutic intervention, simply being in space organized around emotional availability and authentic connection created healing for visitors struggling with their own relationship patterns. Elena's writing, which began as scientific papers incorporating insights from personal transformation, evolved into broader communications that reached diverse audiences seeking integration of spiritual wisdom with practical life application. Her articles appeared in publications ranging from scientific journals to spiritual magazines, always maintaining the precision of academic training while honoring the mystical dimensions of her discoveries. Her writing demonstrated how individual healing becomes universal wisdom when shared with appropriate vulnerability and skillful means. The coastal town of Luminous Cove itself transformed as Elena's presence and the relationships she inspired created culture of emotional availability and authentic connection. Local business owners began prioritizing genuine community over pure profit, creating establishments that served as gathering places for meaningful conversation rather than superficial transaction. The town's reputation as a place of healing and transformation attracted visitors seeking what Elena had discovered: environment where authenticity was welcomed, where vulnerability was met with compassion, where the possibility of secure love felt tangible and accessible. Alana's story became legend the parents shared with children, demonstrating that changing deep patterns was possible, that love could be both passionate and secure. That individual healing contributed to collective well-being. Children who grew up hearing Elena's story developed different expectations about relationship, naturally gravitating toward friends and eventually partners who could match their emotional availability, rather than accepting inconsistent treatment as normal. Most profoundly, Elena's transformation contributed to what psychologists and sociologists began recognizing as cultural shift toward conscious relationship. Her individual journey from accepting emotional unavailability to embodying secure attachment became part of larger movement of humans choosing healing over familiar patterns, growth over comfort, authentic love over dramatic dysfunction. Her story provided template that inspired countless others to examine their own relationship patterns and consider possibilities they had never imagined. In quiet moments of deepest contemplation, Elena understood that her healing journey served purposes beyond her individual happiness. She recognized herself as participating in humanity's collective evolution toward more conscious love. Her nervous system's capacity for secure attachment as contribution to morphic field that made similar healing easier for others. Her transformation became prayer in action, demonstration of love's infinite availability when conditions of safety and authenticity are established. Elena's legacy lived not in monuments or formal recognition, but in countless moments of conscious choice. Every time someone chose available over unavailable partners. Every time boundaries were set with compassion rather than anger. Every time vulnerability was offered to those capable of receiving it skillfully. Her healing journey became invisible infrastructure supporting others' courage to require the love they deserved, to trust their worth enough to release what no longer served their highest good. Standing at her beloved tide pools on anniversary of Dr. Chun's transformative visit, Elena experienced profound gratitude for the journey that had brought her from confusion to clarity, from accepting crumbs to requiring nourishment, from surviving to thriving in love's infinite ocean. Her story continues rippling through collective consciousness, inspiring all who encounter it to remember their inherent worthiness of secure, available, deeply nourishing love.